The high building glowed incessantly in the heart of Seoul, but behind that brilliance lay an oppressive, suffocating atmosphere that Y/N felt every single moment. It was 2 o'clock in the morning. The music in the dance practice room had finally stopped, yet its echo continued to ring in Y/N's ears. She was exhausted. The dark circles under her eyes were a testament to her fatigue. For the past month, she had been John Jungkook's personal makeup artist, a job thousands would die for. But for Y/N, it had become a beautiful prison. With trembling hands, she began packing her makeup kit. Her heart hammered against her ribs because she knew she was now alone in the room with him. The other members and staff had already departed. Y/NR. Jungkook's heavy, deep voice resonated from the empty corner of the room. E/N froze. Jungkook sat before the mirror, his sweat-drenched body clearly visible beneath his white shirt. He pushed his hair back and locked eyes with Y/N through the reflection. "I need a touch-up. I need to look fresh for the next shoot," he said, though no shoot was scheduled. E/N walked toward him in silence. As she leaned in close to his face, she felt the heat of his breath against her neck. He was so close that she could smell the intoxicating mix of expensive cologne and sweat. Terrified, she held her breath. Her hands shook as she began dabbing the sweat from his forehead with a sponge. "Are you afraid of me?" Jungkook asked suddenly. His tone was flat, but there was a strange, predatory glint in his eyes. "No, just tired," Y/N replied, keeping her gaze lowered. Abruptly, Jungkook seized her hand. His large, firm grip tightened around her delicate wrist like an iron shackle. He pulled her toward him with a jerk. Y/N lost her balance and ended up standing right between his knees. The distance between them was now non-existent. "Lying doesn't suit you," Jungkook whispered. He took Y/N's other hand and placed it over his heart. "Look how fast my heart is beating. And yours too. Do you really think this is just tiredness?" Jungkook placed his fingers under Y/N's chin and tilted her face up. He brought his lips to her ear and exhaled softly, sending a chill through her entire body. "I love it when you're near me, when you touch me, even if it's just an excuse for makeup." Tears began to well up in Y/N's eyes. "Jungkook-shi, please. Someone will see. The door is open." "Let them," he said nonchalantly. He wrapped his hand around her waist and pulled her even tighter against him. The intimacy was so overwhelming that Y/N felt like she couldn't breathe. Jungkook pressed his lips against her cheek and slowly trailed them down to her neck. He touched her as if she weren't a human being, but his prized possession. This happened every day. In dark company corridors, in the elevator when they were alone, Jungkook always found a way to corner her. His obsession grew deeper with every passing day. He commented on her clothes, monitored her phone, and if she spoke to any other male staff, his anger became physical. He would drag her into a bathroom and pin her against the wall so hard she would be left with bruises. The next morning, Y/N made a choice. She couldn't endure this hell any longer. She went to the HR office, her face a mask of calm despite the storm inside. "I want to resign, effective immediately," she said, placing the papers before the manager. The manager was stunned. "But Y/N, you're Jungkook's personal artist. Such a high position. What's the reason?" "My family's moving to another city. It's an emergency. I can't work here anymore," Y/N lied, reciting her rehearsed excuse. She rushed through her clearance. Her mind repeated a single thought. "Run. Go so far away that John Jungkook can't even find your name." She discarded her old SIM card, deactivated her social media, and packed her belongings to move into a new, anonymous apartment, the address of which was only in the company's confidential records. 2 days later, the makeup room at Hybe was thick with tension. Jungkook sat in his chair, eyes closed. A new makeup artist, trembling with nerves, was running a brush over his face. "Stop," Jungkook said suddenly. He opened his eyes and glared into the mirror. "Who are you? Where is Y/N?" Sir, Y and C has resigned. I am your new artist starting today, the boy said, his voice quivering. Jungkook's ears went numb. What did you say? Resigned? He violently shoved the new artist's hand away, causing the makeup kit to shatter on the floor. Jungkook stood up and stormed toward the management office. He walked so fast that people scrambled out of his way. His brain was searing with rage. How could she leave? Without asking me. Without my permission. He burst into the manager's cabin without knocking. The manager was on a call but hung up the moment he saw Jungkook's face. Jungkook, what is it? Your shoot? I want YN's address. Now! Jungkook roared. He slammed his fist onto the table so hard that a glass nearby toppled over. Jungkook, relax. She resigned. Her family is moving. She told us. I don't give a damn what she told you. Jungkook grabbed the manager by the collar. The golden Maknae face now looked like that of a monster. She lied to me. She's running from me. Give me her address, or I won't do another minute of work for this company today or for the rest of the year. You can explain the losses to the board. The manager was terrified. He knew Jungkook was not in his right mind. With shaking hands, he pulled up the records on his computer. Here is the address. But Jungkook, understand, this is a violation of... Jungkook snatched the paper and walked out without a backward glance. He grabbed his car keys and drove through the crowded streets of Seoul like a mad hunter. Only one image occupied his mind. Y/N's tearful face and her trembling lips. You made a huge mistake. Y/N. He muttered to himself, his grip on the steering wheel so tight his knuckles turned white. You thought you could get away from me. I will find you in the deepest corner of hell. And now I will make sure you never see the light of day again. He reached the address the manager had given, only to find an old flat. He interrogated the neighbors and found out she had moved to a new location just 2 hours ago. Using his influence, money, and threats, he finally secured Y/N's new secret sanctuary, the place where she was currently trying to breathe a sigh of relief. Jungkook turned the car toward the new apartment. His obsession had officially crossed all boundaries. The new apartment was small, but to Y/N, it felt like the safest place in the world. She had just opened her final packing carton and sat on the floor, exhausted but relieved. Outside, rain had begun to fall, and the rhythmic sound of droplets hitting the window pane soothed her. She truly believed that in the vast, crowded heart of Seoul, she had finally disappeared, and Jungkook would never find her, but that peace was nothing more than an illusion. Knock, knock. A soft tap at the door broke the silence. YN's heart stopped for a beat. Who could it be at this hour? She whispered to herself. Perhaps a neighbor or a delivery person. She cautiously stood up and looked through the peephole. The corridor outside was dark, but it took only a second to recognize the tall, dark silhouette standing there. Her blood turned to ice. It was Jungkook. He wore a black hoodie, his face partially obscured. But his eyes, even in the shadows, they were glowing with a terrifying intensity. E/N backed away, her breath hitching in her throat. She didn't open the door, but then came Jungkook's voice, low, heavy, and dangerous. Y/N, open the door. I know you're inside. E/N didn't respond. She scrambled toward the kitchen to grab her phone, but before she could reach it, a deafening crash shook the room. Jungkook had thrown his shoulder against the door. With a second violent shove, the old door frame splintered, and Jungkook stepped inside. He immediately slammed the door behind him and turned the lock from the inside. Did you really think you could run? Jungkook pulled back his hood. His face was damp from sweat and rain. Strands of hair clung to his forehead, making him look like a crazed predator. Jungkook, please, leave or I'll scream. Y/N sobbed, her hand clutching a small utility knife she had used for packing. Jungkook let out a cold, hollow laugh. He stepped toward her slowly, like a lion cornering its prey. Scream. No one in this building will hear you. And that knife? Do you really think you have it in you to hurt me? In one swift motion, he lunged, twisting her wrist until she cried out and dropped the knife. He pinned her against the wall so violently that a sharp pain shot through the back of her head. He trapped both of her hands above her head with one of his. Betraying me was the biggest mistake of your life, Jungkook whispered against her ear. His touch was now far more violent than ever before. He pressed his hand against her throat, making it difficult for her to breathe. I gave you everything, and you left me without a word. You need to be punished. Y/N. Pep, please, let me go. Y/N whimpered.
Jungkook didn't listen. He pulled out a handkerchief laced with chloroform and pressed it over her mouth and nose. Y/N thrashed and struggled, but Jungkook's grip was like iron. Slowly, her vision blurred, her limbs grew heavy, and the world faded into darkness. When Y/N finally opened her eyes, she wasn't in her apartment. The room was massive, filled with expensive furniture, but there were no windows. The walls were covered in thick, soundproof padding. She was lying on a large bed, but as she tried to move, she felt a heavy tug. A thin gold chain was shackled to her ankle, connected to the heavy footboard of the bed. Are you awake? Jungkook was sitting in a chair in the corner, watching her intently. He held a glass of wine in his hand. This is my second home, far away from the city. Here it's just you and me. No managers, no members, no fans, Jungkook said as he stood up. He walked to the bed and leaned over her. He stroked her cheek with his hand, but the touch was possessive and vengeful. You belong to me here. Only me. You tried to run from me, didn't you? Now this chain will remind you exactly where you belong. You're insane, Jungkook. People will look for you. Y/N screamed. Jungkook gripped her face tightly. No one can find me. Everyone thinks I'm on a break. And you? In the eyes of the world, you've simply vanished. He looked at the faint bruises on her body from their previous encounters, and then slid his hand beneath her shirt. Y/N shivered in terror. Tonight your new life begins. You will have to endure every bit of pain you've caused me, Jungkook said before leaning down to kiss her cruelly. It wasn't intimacy. It was an assault of ownership. He pushed her down into the mattress and climbed over her. He began to tear at her clothes. When Y/N tried to scream for help, Jungkook gagged her with a piece of cloth. Cry all you want. Your tears are my only addiction, he said coldly. All night, the sound of muffled screams and Jungkook's obsession echoed in that soundproof room. He moved between physical torment and a twisted form of intimacy that left Y/N shattered. It was a hell where even death felt like a distant, beautiful dream. The next morning, Jungkook left her there, chained and broken. YN's body was covered in marks, and her eyes were hollow. She realized then that Jeon Jungkook was no longer the idol she once knew. He was a darkness that was slowly swallowing her whole. Meanwhile, back at the company, the other BTS members were growing suspicious. Jungkook had begun missing every practice session. When Jimin finally managed to get him on the phone, Jungkook's voice was cold and distant. I'm a bit sick. I want to be left alone. But the members knew something was wrong. Jungkook never missed practice, and the spark in his voice was gone. A dark secret was festering, and none of them knew just how deep the rabbit hole went.
That locked room in the mansion had become Y/N's entire universe. Time had no meaning there because there were no windows, only a clock on the wall that increased her dread with every ticking second. Jungkook came every day. Sometimes he was hauntingly calm, bringing expensive gifts and fine food as if they were on a romantic date. Other times he entered like a demon, with nothing but pain in his hands. Eat, Jungkook said in a cold, level voice. He sat on the edge of the bed, running his fingers through YN's matted hair with a terrifying tenderness. There was no softness in his eyes. Y/N kicked the plate away. I don't want anything. Let me go, Jungkook. What did I ever do to you? Jungkook's hand stopped. He slowly wrapped his fingers around Y/N's throat and squeezed just enough to make her gasp. You broke my heart, Y/N. By trying to run away, you showed me how much you hate me. And now, I will teach you that my hatred is far deeper than yours." He dragged her off the bed. The gold chain around her ankle snapped taut with a violent jerk, making Y/N scream in pain. Jungkook dragged her across the floor to a corner where iron hooks were bolted into the wall. "No, Jungkook, please." YN began to beg, her voice cracking. He didn't listen to a single word. He hoisted her up and shackled her wrists to those hooks. She was forced to stay on her knees, her arms pulled painfully high. Jungkook pulled out a thin leather belt. Swack! The first strike landed across her back. YN's scream collided with the soundproof walls and bounced back at her. Jungkook struck her repeatedly until angry red welts rose on her pale skin. After every few strikes, he would stop, lean in, and whisper in her ear, "Say it. Say you're mine. Tell me you'll never leave." /N's body was breaking, but a flicker of defiance remained. She stayed silent, her teeth gritted. Jungkook's rage flared. He tossed the belt aside and cupped her face, his grip bruising her jaw. "This silence of yours, it drives me insane." He kissed her brutally, his teeth drawing blood from her lips. It wasn't intimacy. It was a punishment of the senses. He wanted to claim every part of her body that he had touched before. That night, Jungkook fell asleep in the room. He looked exhausted, as if the weight of his own obsession was starting to crush him. YN noticed the glint of a key hanging out of his pocket. Her heart hammered against her chest. This was her last chance. Very slowly, without even daring to breathe, she reached for the key. Her body ached with every movement, but the thirst for freedom was stronger. She managed to snag the key and, with trembling hands, unlocked the shackle on her leg. She crept toward the door on her hands and knees. She slowly turned the lock. The corridor outside was pitch black. She ran toward the main hall, her heart soaring. She thought she had made it. She thought she was free. But just as she reached for the handle of the main door, a heavy hand grabbed her hair from behind and slammed her down onto the marble floor. "Where were you going, my little doll?" Jungkook stood there, his eyes glowing like a predator's in the dark. He hadn't been asleep. He had been watching, waiting to see what she would do. "No, let me go!" Y/N screamed, trying to scramble away, but Jungkook simply hoisted her over his shoulder like a sack of grain. He carried her back to that room, and this time he crossed every boundary. He threw her onto the bed so hard she lost her breath. He tied both of her legs to the corners of the bed frame. "You broke my trust. Now you'll never move from here again," Jungkook roared. He pulled out a metal rod that had been heating in a portable brazier. It wasn't glowing white, but it was searing hot. "No, Jungkook, I'm sorry. Please." But Jungkook was beyond the point of mercy. He touched the rod lightly to Y/N's thigh. The smell of burning skin and Y/N's agonizing scream filled the room. "Now, this mark will forever remind you that you are John Jungkook's property. The price of running is worse than death," he said coldly. All night, Jungkook tortured her until she was on the verge of losing consciousness. And when she was completely broken, he took her with an extreme, hateful intimacy, an act that held no love, only the desire to dominate. He whispered repeatedly into her ear, "You can never leave me, not even in death." By the time morning came, Y/N was alive, but her soul had departed. She lay on the bed like a living corpse, and Jungkook sat there, cradling her head in his lap, stroking her hair as if nothing had happened at all.